The moment you stop shrinking, the people who depended on your smallness start shaking. My dear chosen ones, let that sink in like a truth bomb dropped straight into the heart of every manipulator who ever thought they had you figured out. You were never the fragile one. You were the trigger, the awakening, the reason their mask cracked. You didn't break them. Your existence exposed what was already broken. Welcome, chosen ones. Today, we're not whispering. We're not softening the message. We're calling things by their real names. You've got cult leaders, puppet masters, self-appointed emperors of control, stumbling over their own minds because you walked into their world with the kind of presence they can't imitate, duplicate, or dominate. And they hate that. They love that. They fear that. They obsess over that, all at the same time. Let's rewrite the main heading into what it truly is, my chosen ones. When you step into the room, their entire house of cards starts playing Jenga. Because that's what happens. These people don't fall in love with you. They fall apart in front of you. They don't admire you. They unravel. They don't desire you. They panic because you represent everything they can't control, can't predict, and can't mentally cage. Your presence, chosen one, is the reset button they never asked for but desperately needed, and that terrifies them. Some of you ask yourselves, why do these controlling people get obsessed with me? Let me answer you plainly. Because you are the one thing their psychological playbook didn't prepare for. You don't chase ego crumbs. You don't worship illusions. You don't bow to false authority. You don't react on command. You don't break under pressure, and that alone turns their internal compass into a spinning wheel of panic and fascination. Before we move forward, my dear chosen ones, take a moment to support this space that pours truth, power, and clarity into your journey. If this message is already hitting your spirit, your mind, or your confidence in a way you didn't expect, show some love by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support fuels the energy, devotion, and effort it takes to bring you content that awakens you, strengthens you, and keeps you aligned with the power you carry. Every like, every subscription, and every share helps us continue delivering life-shifting messages made exactly for you. Chosen ones, you are the glitch in their system, the unhackable code, the silent alarm that exposes their entire operation without you lifting a single finger. Your authenticity walks into the room like a spotlight, and suddenly their performances look like amateur improv acts. Their confidence starts sweating, their voice loses its echo, their power starts slipping through their fingers like sand they can't tighten their fist around. And you're not even doing anything, you're just being you. That's what drives them insane. You ever notice how people built on manipulation get loud, theatrical, and dramatic? Yet your impact isn't loud at all. You don't roar, you resonate. You don't force, you embody. You don't demand, you exist. And your existence exposes the difference between real presence and manufactured power. They sense it, they feel it, they can't run from it. My dear chosen ones, this is where the fear and obsession mix like gasoline and fire. They can't predict you, they can't read you, they can't control you. And psychology is clear. The mind becomes obsessed with what it cannot map. To them, you're an equation missing too many variables, a puzzle with infinite outcomes, an emotional storm that shows up without warning but leaves truth in its wake. They watch you with the intensity of someone studying for an exam they never attended a single lecture for. They pace, they recalculate, they replay every word you said. They take mental notes like you're a thesis they didn't know they'd be writing. Meanwhile, you're just out here minding your business, sipping your water, breathing air, and accidentally exposing their entire identity crisis. Chosen ones, you don't intimidate by force, you intimidate by clarity. You don't confront them, you reveal them. And nothing hits a manipulator harder than being seen by someone who refuses to fear them. Your presence makes them realize that their influence isn't real influence. It's borrowed power, propped up by confusion and insecurity. And you, with your grounded energy, expose every unstable crack like sunlight slipping through a broken window. So if you've ever wondered, why me? Why do these people get so obsessed, so shaken, so mentally scrambled? It's because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out by simply standing true. You were meant to be the calm that exposes their chaos, the clarity that reveals their fog, the presence that breaks their performance. You didn't ask to be their mental earthquake, chosen one. You didn't wake up planning to dismantle their hierarchy. But when your energy enters a space built on illusion, truth becomes the loudest one in the room, even when you say nothing at all. And that is why they can't handle you. That is why they can't forget you. That is why they study you. That is why they fall apart over you. Because your existence isn't just powerful, it's disruptive in the most undeniable way. Chosen ones, before we go any deeper into why your energy has cult leaders spinning in circles, let me speak directly to you. If this message is already cracking open truths you've felt but never had words for, don't just watch, stay connected. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop 33 in the comments if you're ready to own the power that makes manipulators lose their balance around you. Your support keeps this channel creating the raw, life-shifting content you deserve. And if you feel called, a super thanks goes a long way in helping us deliver even more. Now take a breath, chosen one, because what comes next will feel eerily familiar. These aren't random signs. They're the exact patterns you've lived through simply because you're a dangerous earth angel with a presence that rewires mind games and exposes fake power instantly. Only chosen ones carry this kind of impact. Ordinary people never trigger reactions this intense. All right, let's dive in step by step, and believe me, if you are who you think you are, you're about to recognize every detail. Let's get started. Number 1, your truth shatters their carefully built illusions. When your realness knocks the mask off their make-believe throne. Nothing scares a fraud more than someone who's real enough to make their entire act look cheap. My dear chosen ones, let this truth cut deep into the psyche of anyone who ever tried to hide behind smoke, shadows, and psychological puppetry. You don't have to expose them with words. You expose them by existing. You don't have to confront their ego. Your authenticity confronts it for you. You don't have to tear down their stage. Your presence alone makes the whole set wobble like a cardboard castle in a rainstorm. That's the power you carry, even on days you don't feel powerful at all. And I know some of you are asking yourselves, why does my presence bother certain people so intensely? Why do manipulators glitch around me? Why do they act like I'm attacking them when I'm literally doing nothing? Let me answer you. Chosen one. It's because they built their world on illusion, and you walk in carrying truth like a spotlight they never asked for but can't escape. These cult leader types, these self-appointed masters of control and perception, they spend years perfecting their persona. They craft stories, rehearse charisma, and engineer confusion to keep everyone orbiting around them. Their identity depends on no one seeing behind the curtain. But the moment you show up, the curtain doesn't just slip, it falls. You don't buy their performance. You don't flinch at their theatrics. You don't melt under their pressure. You don't worship their image the way their followers do. And that alone turns their confidence into sawdust. Chosen one, you are the human lie detector they never planned for. Your realness is sharper than any truth serum. They've mastered reading people, but when they look at you, their radar goes silent. They've mastered controlling people, but you're not wired for puppet strings. You don't absorb their energy, you observe it. You don't cling to their approval, you stand in your own. You don't dance for their validation. You move on your own rhythm. And that, to someone addicted to control, feels like losing gravity. Your authenticity is not just powerful, it's disruptive. You walk in quietly and their entire illusion starts sweating. Their voice loses its edge. Their mask starts slipping. Their strategies start scrambling. Why? Because authenticity exposes artificiality without even trying. It shows the difference between someone who is and someone who is acting. You don't have to call them out. They feel called out just by being around you. Think of it like this. They are a projector. You are the sunlight. And sunlight doesn't fight shadows. It simply dissolves them. Chosen one, they've spent years studying how to control people, but they never studied how to handle someone they can't control. Someone they can't manipulate. Someone who sees them too clearly. They feel naked around you. Not physically, but psychologically. Every layer of their persona starts falling off the moment you walk in, because you represent the one thing they avoid at all costs: authenticity that can't be faked. You ever notice how they get uncomfortable when you stay calm? How they talk louder when you stay grounded? How their ego inflates when you don't react? That's not coincidence. It's exposure. Their confidence was never confidence. It was performance fueled by the compliance of others. But your grounded energy, your quiet clarity, your unfiltered presence shows them how flimsy their dominance really is. And that revelation is devastating to someone who survives on illusion. You don't just shake their confidence. You reveal the fact that it was never real. This is why they become obsessed. This is why they study you like a puzzle with missing pieces. This is why they react to you with fascination, fear, admiration, irritation, all tangled together. Because you don't attack their power, you expose that they never had power to begin with. My dear chosen ones, you are the mirror they never wanted to face. You are the reality check they do everything to avoid. You are the reminder that authenticity will always outshine theatrics. You are the presence that makes their entire identity feel like a costume slipping off in slow motion. And once they see it, once they feel that their illusion crumbles in your light, they can't unsee it. They can't unknow it. They can't escape it. That's why they obsess. Not because you're trying to shake their world, but because your very existence proves how fragile their world truly is. You didn't come to challenge them. You came as yourself. And somehow, that alone was enough to unmask everything they pretend to be. Number 2. You awaken the feelings they buried to survive. When your presence reawakens the humanity they buried to survive. My dear chosen ones, let's begin with a truth that hits harder than any insult ever could. Nothing shakes a person built on control more than the return of the feelings they swore they'd never feel again. And that, chosen one, is exactly what you trigger in these cult leader types. The ones who walk around pretending they're made of steel, pretending nothing touches them, pretending they're above emotion, connection, or vulnerability. They crafted their persona like armor, believing that if they hardened themselves enough, they'd never have to face the softness they abandoned. But then you walked in, a dangerous earth angel with a presence powerful enough to rattle their internal walls, and suddenly the emotions they buried start clawing their way back to the surface. Let's break this open. People who rise to manipulative power rarely do so from emotional wholeness. They don't dominate because they're strong. They dominate because at some point in their life, they decided that feeling was too risky. They learned the wrong lesson from pain. Instead of healing it, they weaponized it. They told themselves, "I will never be vulnerable again," and built their identity around that vow. Compassion became a liability. Empathy became a weakness. Connection became a trap. So they traded them all for control, for dominance, for the illusion of untouchable strength. Over time, that choice calcified into a personality, cold, strategic, emotionally disconnected. They learned how to manipulate without guilt because they numbed the part of themselves that was capable of guilt in the first place. They turned off their humanity the same way someone switches off a light to avoid seeing what's really in the room. They didn't become powerful, they became hollow. But they wore that hollowness like a crown. And then you walked in. You didn't challenge them. You didn't confront them. You didn't expose them. You simply existed, and that was enough to crack open the humanity they thought they buried for good. Chosen ones, when you enter their space with your grounded presence, your genuine warmth, your emotional clarity, you unknowingly hit them right where they're most fragile. Your kindness doesn't feel like kindness to them. It feels like danger, not because your kindness hurts them, but because it forces them to feel again. Something they've avoided for years, something they've survived by avoiding. Imagine someone who's lived years in emotional winter. Then suddenly, you show up like sunlight, warm, gentle, real. They haven't built defenses for warmth, they've only built defenses for attack. That's why they react so strangely. They don't know how to process real emotion. They don't know how to sit with genuine admiration or respect. They don't know how to interpret being understood without being exploited. So they mislabel everything. Your kindness becomes obsession. Your presence becomes connection. Your clarity becomes love. Not because they love you, but because they are emotionally disoriented. Chosen ones, you become the mirror they never wanted to look into. In your presence, they see not the persona they built, but the person they abandoned. The softer version of themselves that once existed before control took over. The child who once felt deeply, cared openly, trusted naturally. The version of themselves that wasn't addicted to dominance, performance, or power. You remind them of what they lost, and that reminder hurts. But it also draws them to you, not in a healthy way, not in a stable way, but in a way that feels like compulsion. They aren't in love with you. They're in love with the version of themselves your presence resurrects. It's not romance, it's not admiration. It's emotional shock. And for someone who built an entire existence around being untouchable, nothing is more destabilizing than accidentally feeling human again. You are the earthquake that makes their carefully stacked emotional walls crumble, not with destruction, but with truth. You awaken the humanity they thought they successfully killed, and that single fact is enough to make them fixate on you, chase you, mimic you, or fear you. Not because you give them something, but because your presence reveals everything they lost on the way to becoming who they are now. You shine a light on the emptiness they crafted their life around. And when a chosen one, an earth angel with a frequency they can't manipulate, awakens what they buried, it shakes them to their core. You didn't ask for this power. You didn't try to activate it, but you have it. And that, chosen one, is why they can't stop obsessing. Number 3, your energy operates on a level. Their tactics can't touch. You move at a frequency their manufactured power can't touch. My dear chosen ones, here's a truth that lands like a thunderclap. When your energy is real, anyone built on imitation will short-circuit trying to decode you. And that is exactly what happens when you, the dangerous earth angel that you are, walk into a space ruled by people who rely on predictability to feel powerful. These cult leader types have spent their entire lives studying human behavior like it's a manual they can master. They know how to exploit fear, reward obedience, and manipulate insecurity. Their control doesn't come from real strength. It comes from patterns. But you're the one pattern they can't read, map, or mentally cage. You are the exception that breaks their entire system. Chosen one, understand this deeply. They depend on predictable reactions. people who freeze when spoken to with authority, people who lean in when offered validation, people who crumble under guilt or collapse under pressure. Their entire identity is built on these psychological shortcuts. It's how they control rooms, relationships, and reputations. But when you show up with your frequency, clean, self-powered, untamed, they realize their buttons don't work on you. Their pressure doesn't faze you. Their tactics don't land. Their tone doesn't bend your spine or silence your voice. And that shakes them at a level they don't know how to hide. Because you don't respond to fear the way others do. You don't shrink when someone raises their voice. You don't chase approval as if your worth hangs in their hands. You don't fold just because someone thinks they can dominate the atmosphere. Your presence doesn't contract, it expands. And that alone makes their entire illusion feel like a cheap stage prop next to someone who radiates authenticity without trying. Chosen one, they expect people to flinch, but you observe. They expect people to idolize their theatrics, but you blink and move on. They expect people to absorb their emotional storms, but you remain grounded, unfazed, steady. This is why they become obsessed, not because they understand you, but because they can't. You feel like a sealed vault they don't have the blueprint for, a code they were never trained to crack, a frequency they've never encountered. Your vibration is built on something no manipulator can penetrate. It isn't rooted in fear. It isn't influenced by attachment. It isn't shaped by insecurity. You stand on truth, intuition, emotional maturity, and self-awareness, qualities that can't be manipulated into submission. And because they cannot influence you, they interpret your presence as a threat. Not because you are doing anything to them, but because your very existence reveals how limited their power truly is. They used to believe they had mastery over people. They used to think they could bend anyone with the right mix of charm, pressure, and psychological tricks. But then you show up, and your frequency exposes the truth. They only have mastery over the unhealed. Their influence is not power, it's dependency. And your presence, chosen one, highlights that contrast like a spotlight in a dark theater. They thought their energy was strong. They thought they were magnetic. They thought they were untouchable. But beside you, all of that folds like aluminum foil in a thunderstorm. Because your frequency, steady, sovereign, elevated, sits in a completely different league. A league they cannot mimic, copy, or counterfeit, no matter how much they rehearse their persona. And that terrifies them. Not because you're aggressive, not because you're confrontational, but because you are untouchable in a way they could never become. You don't engage in power struggles. They lose power just by standing next to you. You don't resist their influence. You simply rise beyond its reach. Your energy moves like a current they can't swim in, can't hold on to, and certainly can't control. Chosen one, this is why they spiral. This is why their mind races. This is why they watch you the way someone watches a rare phenomenon they don't understand but can't ignore. They don't just get intrigued, they get rattled. They get obsessed. They get hooked on trying to decode something that was never meant for their understanding. Because when someone who lives off controlling others encounters a soul they cannot penetrate, their entire identity destabilizes. And you, my chosen one, become the one frequency their false power can't survive. Number 4, you see through them in ways their followers never could. When their followers fear them, but you see straight through them. My dear chosen ones, this is where everything in their world begins to tilt. The people they lead tremble around them, tiptoe around their moods, adjust themselves like pawn pieces waiting for permission to breathe. These cult leader types build their entire identity on being intimidating, unreachable, untouchable. They love standing on a pedestal because from up there, no one can get close enough to see the cracks. Their followers treat them like a hybrid of authority and mystery, a figure too elevated to question and too powerful to fully understand. But underneath that facade is a truth they work overtime to hide. They are not respected, they are feared. And fear is shallow, fear is hollow. Fear is one lightning strike away from collapsing. They know this, even when they pretend they don't. They know the people around them aren't connected to them, they're controlled by them. Then you show up, chosen one, and your presence alone rewrites the dynamic. You don't flinch at their intensity. You don't get dizzy from their theatrics. You don't fall into line the way everyone else does. You don't treat them like a deity or some higher being. You treat them like a person, a real, raw, flawed human being. And that, right there, is what shatters them more than any form of rebellion ever could. They've handled defiance, they've handled confrontation, but they have never handled being understood. They've never encountered someone who sees past the persona, past the performance, past the carefully curated authority into the human underneath. And that scares them far more than fear ever could. Chosen one, you read them with a clarity that makes them uneasy. You see their patterns, their insecurities, their motives, their wounds, without judgment, without flattery, without intimidation. You see the role they play, but you also see the wounded child behind the costume. You recognize the hunger for control that comes from deep emptiness. You notice the exhaustion in their eyes, the weight of constantly maintaining an identity too heavy for them to carry. They've spent their whole life hiding behind dominance because vulnerability felt like death. But when you see them, not the leader, not the illusion, but the actual human, they feel something they haven't felt in years, exposure without attack. And that, chosen one, drives them out of their mind. Their followers fear them, but fear keeps a safe distance. You understand them, and understanding gets too close. When someone truly understands you, they touch the parts of you you've buried. Understanding sees the secrets fear never uncovers. And when the one who understands them is a chosen one, a grounded, intuitive, perceptive force who cannot be manipulated, that understanding becomes a mirror they cannot escape. It reflects their truth back at them, even when they're desperate to look away. This is where their obsession begins. You don't worship them like their followers do, but you also don't despise them. You simply recognize them. You meet them at a depth they didn't know anyone could reach. You see their flaws without weaponizing them. You acknowledge their insecurity without exploiting it. You observe their persona without mistaking it for their identity. You treat them like a human being, and that disarms them in ways nothing else has. For a brief moment, chosen one, they feel something unfamiliar, relief. Relief from pretending, relief from performing, relief from carrying a persona that never truly fit. And that feeling is dangerous to them. Because once they experience that kind of genuine recognition from you, suddenly every follower around them feels emotionally irrelevant. Their entire crowd feels like background noise. Because none of them sees what you see. None of them reads what you read. None of them understands what you understand. And in that moment, you become the only person in their world who sees them fully and doesn't flinch. That kind of emotional exposure creates an attachment they cannot control, cannot explain, and cannot turn off. Their followers fear them, but you see them. And being seen by a chosen one is the one experience they can neither manipulate nor recover from. Number 5. You move through their hierarchy like it doesn't exist, when their hierarchy crumbles the moment you walk in. My dear chosen ones, this is the part that hits them the hardest. Your soul does not bow, shrink, or request permission to exist. You walk into a room with the quiet certainty of someone who knows their worth is not measured by any ladder, title, or artificially inflated throne. And the moment you do, every self-appointed leader, Every fake authority figure, every manipulator who built their world on dominance and compliance feels something inside of them shatter, because you move like someone who has no master. That alone unravels their entire ecosystem. These cult leader personalities thrive on hierarchy like a parasite thrives on a host. They construct a whole psychological pyramid where every person is trained to look up to them, to wait for their approval, to adjust their every breath to fit the script. They build systems of control where obedience is labeled loyalty, hesitation is labeled disrespect, and independence is labeled rebellion. Their power is not earned, it's engineered. It survives because people are conditioned to believe there is a ladder and that the manipulator sits at the top of it. And for years this illusion works flawlessly until a chosen one walks in. Chosen one, when you show up, you don't see a ladder, you see a room. You don't see a gatekeeper, you see another human pretending to be one. You don't see hierarchy, you see performance. And it's that internal freedom, that refusal to buy into their structure, that makes them feel like the ground beneath them is tilting. They expect people to tiptoe. You walk naturally. They expect people to wait for cues. You move when it feels right. They expect applause or fear. You give neutrality. They expect submission. You give presence. And that presence is louder than any rebellion could ever be. Nothing terrifies a controller more than someone who is immune to their system. They have spent years perfecting their dominance. How to control the conversation, the room, the atmosphere, even the emotional temperature. But when you show up, their influence hits a wall. It doesn't sink into you the way it does with others. You don't flinch, shrink, or adjust. You simply are. And chosen one, that being of yours, that grounded existence, is enough to expose how fragile their entire setup really is. Hierarchies only work when people agree to the ladder. You don't, and suddenly the whole structure looks flimsy, artificial, and unnecessary. Their followers notice. Oh, they notice immediately. The same people who once kept their heads down now lift their eyes. Not because you tried to impress them or challenge anything, but because you carry a natural authority that doesn't demand recognition. You didn't bow. You didn't audition. You didn't seek approval. You showed them a different way of existing, one that doesn't require anyone's permission. And that is why the cult leader starts spiraling. Not because you attacked them, not because you confronted them, but because you refused to be contained. Your independence highlights their dependence. Your grounded presence exposes their insecurity. Your authenticity makes their authority look like a costume. They realize in real time that their so-called leadership only works on people conditioned to need it. But you don't need them, and nothing is more threatening to a power-hungry mind than someone who cannot be owned, shaped, guilt-tripped, or kept small. Chosen one, you demonstrate something they cannot mimic. Authority without domination, confidence without cruelty, power without theatrics. You show that alignment, not fear, is what real power looks like. And that contrast rattles them on a level they don't admit out loud. It forces them to question whether their influence was ever real or just an illusion propped up by compliant minds. And here's the twist they never saw coming. You weren't trying to dismantle anything. You didn't arrive with an agenda. You didn't come to tear down their hierarchy. You didn't step into the room to challenge them. You simply walked in as yourself, a dangerous earth angel, untethered, uncontained, and unbothered. But your presence alone became the chaos they never anticipated and the truth they can't escape. Chosen one, you are the reminder that real power doesn't stand on top of people, it stands within itself. And that reality is enough to make every false leader realize their throne was never more than cardboard dressed as gold. Number 6. Your presence reveals a depth they've only ever imitated. When your inner gravity exposes the rank they only pretended to have. My dear chosen ones, here's the part that rattles them down to the bone. They can feel that you operate at a level they've only rehearsed. And nothing destabilizes a pretender faster than standing in the presence of someone who embodies, without effort, the very essence they've spent years counterfeiting. These cult leader types cloak themselves in titles, symbols, rehearsed wisdom, and carefully crafted personas. They learn the language, they mimic the movements, they master the theatrics. They polish their image so thoroughly that their followers believe in it. And sometimes even they start believing in their own performance. But deep down, beneath all that acting, they know the truth. There's no real depth behind the display. Their entire identity hinges on the illusion of having a higher rank than everyone else in the room. It's fragile, it's hollow, it's performative, and they know it, especially when someone like you walks in. Chosen one, here's where things get interesting. You don't need a crown to command presence. You don't need a title to be respected. You don't need a ritual to be aligned. You don't even need to announce your strength. You just are. Your energy speaks before you do. Your awareness carries weight without force. Your intuition moves like a radar they cannot jam. And your authenticity radiates with a quiet intensity they cannot imitate, no matter how many personas they rehearse. To someone whose entire position is built on pretending to be above others, meeting someone who genuinely carries inner clarity feels like being exposed. They sense immediately that your frequency isn't curated. It's natural, it's grounded, it's ancient in maturity, even if you're young in age. And that reality shakes them at a level no argument or confrontation ever could. You see, chosen ones, they've spent their lifetime acting like they are attuned, enlightened, awakened, whatever term they choose to inflate their image. But when you enter their space, their performance suddenly feels flimsy, like a costume in a spotlight that's too bright. Their voice doesn't echo the same. Their charisma doesn't land the same. Their rituals feel mechanical, almost awkward, because your presence reveals what's authentic and what's artificial without you saying a word. It's not that you expose them intentionally, it's simply that your existence contrasts with their illusion in the most undeniable way. For the first time, they meet someone who isn't hypnotized by their aura, someone who doesn't bow to their manufactured authority, someone who isn't dazzled by their practiced wisdom. Instead, you look at them with calm neutrality, and that neutrality terrifies them. Why? Because it tells them you see them clearly, not the persona, not the facade, not the theatrics, but the real person underneath. And deep down, that person is painfully aware that their power is borrowed. Their superiority is staged. Their confidence is stitched together from other people's admiration. Meanwhile, you carry an inner gravity they can't replicate. They feel it, chosen one. They feel it in your posture, in your silence, in your grounded presence. It pulls at them like a truth they've avoided their entire life. You represent everything they wish they were, everything they claim to be, and everything they know they can never authentically achieve. And that realization hits like a psychological earthquake. That's why they get obsessed, not because you try to dominate them, but because you exist as undeniable proof that real influence doesn't need a performance. Real alignment doesn't need applause. Real presence doesn't need permission. You carry what they imitate. You embody what they pretend. You radiate what they rehearse. And this contrast leaves them spiraling, not knowing whether to admire you, fear you, resent you, or cling to you. Being around you makes them feel the gap between their persona and their truth, and that gap becomes impossible to ignore. You become the mirror they spent their life avoiding, the reflection that shows them their costume was never convincing to someone who actually sees, and that is why they fixate. Authentic power is something they cannot fabricate, cannot steal, cannot manipulate. They can only witness it, desire it, and come undone in its presence. Chosen one, you didn't come to outshine them, you simply shine, and that alone is enough to unravel everything they've ever pretended to be. Number 7. Your self-worth is untouchable by their approval games. When your self-worth doesn't need their stamp of approval, their whole power game falls apart. My dear chosen ones, here's a truth that hits the enemy harder than anything else you carry. You don't need their validation. And for people who survive on emotional control, that is the one currency they can't counterfeit, bargain for, or steal from you. You must understand how deeply this rattles them. These cult leader types, these manipulators who built their identity on getting others to bend, break and bow, rely on one thing above all: your reaction, your approval, your need for them, your desire to be seen by them. Without those things, their entire psychological economy collapses like a market crash they never prepared for. Cult leaders thrive on emotional dependence. They measure their worth by how many people cling to their words, adjust their emotions to their tone, or shrink at their judgment. Every compliment someone begs for, every apology whispered in fear, every approval-seeking smile, it all feeds their illusion of power. They collect these moments like coins, and the more they gather, the more they believe they are irreplaceable. They study people ruthlessly, memorizing insecurities, predicting reactions, shaping behaviors, and keeping everyone orbiting around their authority. They think influence is power, when really it's just a leash tied to the fragile egos of the people they manipulate. But then a chosen one walks in, you, and instantly the entire game breaks. You don't seek their approval. You don't crave their praise. You don't light up when they acknowledge you. You don't dim when they ignore you. And chosen one, this alone hits them harder than any confrontation or exposure ever could. People like them are used to being the emotional sun everyone orbits around. But you walk in with your own light source. You don't revolve around them. You shine parallel. And they don't know whether to be intrigued, threatened, or obsessed. They expected you to need them. Instead, you're unmoved. They expected you to chase their validation. Instead, you validate yourself. They expected you to fear their disapproval. Instead, their judgment barely grazes your awareness. Chosen one, this is where everything in their system starts glitching. They spent years crafting a persona designed to impress, intimidate, or emotionally hook people. But when their charm fails on you, when their intimidation doesn't land, when their praise feels unnecessary, they realize something terrifying. They have no power over you, none. And someone who is addicted to control cannot handle being powerless, especially not in front of someone who carries as much presence as you do. Your independence exposes the weakness behind their entire facade. They built their identity on being needed. You show them that real power is being whole without permission. They built their influence on manipulating wounded people. You show them what a healed, grounded, emotionally intelligent mind looks like. They built their authority on the fear of rejection. You show them that rejection doesn't scare you because your worth isn't determined by external opinions, especially not theirs. And this, chosen one, is why they become obsessed. Your existence contradicts everything they believe about themselves. They thought dominance made them powerful. But you show them that emotional freedom is the real dominance. They thought admiration meant control. But you show them that admiration without force means authenticity. They thought authority meant being followed. But you show them that true authority is internal, not something granted by others. They try everything. A compliment here, a cold stare there, a hint of disapproval, a strategic silence, a sudden friendliness, a subtle intimidation. But none of it works. You don't react. You don't fold. You don't cling. You don't step into their trap. And each time you stay grounded, each time you remain unmoved, each time you refuse to depend on their response for your stability, they crack a little more inside. Your freedom is their nightmare. Your emotional independence is their mirror. Your self-worth is their unraveling. Because you don't fight them. You don't argue with them. You don't expose them loudly. You expose them by being whole. And that kind of exposure is inescapable. For someone who feeds off being the center of attention, watching you exist outside their gravitational pull is maddening. They obsess over you not because they love you in a genuine way, but because your presence shows them a truth they've spent their entire life avoiding. Real power isn't taken, it's given, cultivated. And you, my dear chosen one, cultivated it without their approval, without their permission, and without their influence. That is what unravels them. That is why they can't stop thinking about you. That is why your independence becomes their obsession. And that is why you remain untouchable. Number 8. Your emotional clarity disarms their manipulation instantly. When your emotional mastery turns their manipulation into child's play. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about one of your most dangerous gifts, the one that makes cult leaders fall apart in ways they'll never admit. Emotional intelligence. Not the trendy kind, not the book definition kind, but the lived, earned, scar-forged kind. The kind that comes from walking through fire and learning how not to burn. The kind that turns your intuition into a radar these manipulators can't jam, hack, or outrun. And the moment you step into their world with that level of emotional clarity, every trick in their handbook becomes useless. These cult leader types, masters of manipulation, emperors of emotional puppetry, they rely on one thing above all else, the assumption that everyone around them is unhealed. They study insecurities the way others study languages. They memorize people's fears like lines from a script. They sniff out longing, abandonment wounds, approval addiction, loneliness, and self-doubt like bloodhounds. To them, emotions aren't expressions. They're levers, and it works almost every time because most people are navigating life with emotional bruises that haven't been named yet. But then you show up, chosen one, a dangerous earth angel wrapped in clarity, carrying emotional intelligence that doesn't bend or break under pressure. And suddenly the entire landscape shifts. Their strategies don't land, their traps don't close, their guilt trips die on impact. You don't carry unhealed wounds for them to poke at. You don't crave connection so desperately that you tolerate red flags. You don't lose yourself in flattery, nor do you shrink under pressure. Your emotional radar picks up on their intentions before they even fully form the sentence, and that alone terrifies them. You see, manipulators depend on emotional blind spots. They need you confused so they can guide you. They need you desperate so they can supply you. They need you insecure so they can validate you. But you, my chosen one, you've outgrown the stage where emotional crumbs felt like a feast. You've claimed your identity so thoroughly that they can't bait you with false belonging. They can't tempt you with approval because you don't need theirs. You're not starving, so their love bombing fails. You're not guilty, so their shame tactics collapse. You're not afraid of losing them, so their threats lose volume. This is where the obsession begins. Because now, the very tools they relied on to control entire groups suddenly mean nothing in your presence. You see the motive behind the smile. You feel the pressure behind the praise. You notice the hidden motives disguised as warmth. Nothing slips through your awareness. And manipulators aren't prepared for someone who sees them this clearly without even trying. To them, it feels like you're holding a map of their entire emotional architecture. Every insecurity, every tactic, every pressure point, while they can't even read the surface of your reactions. That power dynamic flips their world upside down. They're used to knowing exactly how someone will respond. But you stay calm when they turn up the heat. You stay grounded when they try to destabilize the room. You hold your boundaries like a fortress while everyone else melts like wax under their influence. They can't understand how you're doing it. They can't replicate your calm. They can't mimic your emotional intelligence. They can't figure out how you stay so centered while they throw everything they've mastered toward you. And the more they try to gain emotional leverage, the more exposed they become. Their tactics reveal themselves. Their cracks widen. Their aura of control dissolves. Chosen one, what destabilizes them most is not that you fight back. It's that you don't fall for anything. You don't react the way they expect. You don't give them the emotional cues they rely on. And suddenly they are the ones confused. They are the ones overthinking. They are the ones spiraling. Your emotional intelligence becomes a mirror they never wanted to face. A mirror that shows them their manipulation has limits, their influence has boundaries, and their strategies have expiration dates. You're not just immune to their tactics. You're the reminder that their entire empire of emotional control only works on the unhealed. And you, chosen one, are no longer living from that place. That truth alone makes them fixate, unravel, and obsess, because you are the one person they can't emotionally control, decode, or break. Number 9, your inner calm exposes how forced their entire act truly is. When your calm turns their whole circus into background noise. There's a reason, my dear chosen ones, why your presence rattles the very people who depend on chaos to feel relevant. Some individuals build their power on storms, dramatic energy, tension, noise, and psychological pressure. They thrive in environments where everyone's nervous system is on high alert. They believe that if they can keep everyone spinning, guessing, reacting, and second-guessing themselves, then they remain the center of gravity. Cult leaders, whether spiritual, emotional, social, or psychological, operate exactly like this. Their influence survives only when the world around them is loud enough to drown out clarity. But then you walk in, and suddenly the volume drops. Your calm isn't just a mood, it's a force. It's a frequency that cuts through their theatrics like a blade through silk. You don't match their intensity. You don't mirror their dramatics. You don't get swept up in their spirals. Instead, you stand there, steady, grounded, and unbothered. And in a world built on artificial tension, your calm becomes the brightest, most disruptive truth in the room. Chosen one, you make their entire performance look staged, their power look exaggerated, their authority look borrowed, and their charisma look like it came from a script they rehearsed too many times. They operate like a lightning storm. You walk in like still water, and still water always reveals what storms try to hide. The truth is, these individuals rely on noise. Noise is their camouflage. Noise keeps people from seeing the cracks in their leadership, the insecurity beneath their bravado, and the hollowness behind their rituals. They create an atmosphere so charged that nobody stops long enough to question why everything feels so heavy, so urgent, so dramatic. But when you enter the space with that dangerous earth angel calm, the kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't bend, doesn't get hypnotized, the entire illusion is exposed. My dear chosen one, your calm is not passive. It is confrontational without being confrontational. It's the kind of energy that says, I see through this, and they feel that. You make their rituals feel rehearsed, their speeches feel exaggerated, and their rules feel absurd. You make their urgency look like desperation. You make their charisma look like costume jewelry next to the raw, unfiltered presence you carry. And even their followers start noticing. They look at you standing there, unshaken, unmoved, uninterested in joining the chaos, and something inside them clicks. They realize there's another way to exist. A freer way, a calmer way, a way that doesn't require bending to theatrics. And that, chosen one, terrifies the cult leader more than anything, because for the first time, people see that power doesn't require noise. Influence doesn't require intensity. Presence doesn't require domination. They see that someone can be magnetic without performing, strong without shouting, grounded without intimidation. Suddenly, the supposed leader is no longer the center of the room. You are, and you didn't even try. Your calm is the mirror that reflects their chaos back to them. It exposes how forced and artificial their entire operation truly is. They built an empire on the idea that heightened emotion equals power, but you reveal that real power is silent, stable, and internal. Your calm shows the difference between someone who controls a room and someone who anchors it. And anchoring always wins. This is why they become obsessed, why they keep watching you from the corner of their eye, why they overanalyze your silence, why they replay every interaction. They can't figure out how you stay so composed in the atmosphere they curated to destabilize others. They can't understand why their intensity doesn't intimidate you. They can't process why you don't crumble under their theatrics the way their followers do. And here's the truth they will never admit. Your existence makes their entire world look fake. Your calm reveals how hard they have to work to maintain control, how much energy it takes to manufacture importance, how fragile their influence really is beneath the noise. No amount of performance can replicate the grounded presence you naturally hold. They can mimic charisma, they can rehearse power, but they cannot imitate calm born from authenticity. So they fixate, they spiral, they circle back, they study, they obsess. Because chosen one, you didn't just enter their world, you exposed it. And once exposed, nothing they do will ever feel as powerful as your quiet, unshakable presence that shook their entire system without you ever raising your voice. As we bring all of this together, my dear chosen ones, remember this. Your presence alone rewrites the entire dynamic. You don't challenge the chaos. They crumble under the weight of your calm, your clarity, and the truth you carry without trying. That's the real power you walk with, and it's why certain people lose their grip the moment you enter the room. If this resonated with you today, support the message by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping 77 in the comments to claim your alignment. And share this with another chosen one who needs to remember exactly who they are.